If Heath's private life during 2003 and 2004 had been eventful, in no way did this affect his film productivity during that time. Quite the opposite. He was constantly flying around the world to take part in a remarkably wide range of productions. Soon after meeting with Naomi Watts on the Ned Kelly set, he was off to Prague again, this time to co-star in The Brothers Grimm, a fantasy film based on the lives of the German brothers Jacob and Wilhelm, who collected and published European folk tales in the early 19th century, which thrilled and frightened generations of children during the subsequent 200 years. Snow White, Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and Hansel and Gretel were among the classics chronicled in their books. It was far from a normal film biography, however. Given the director in charge of the project, it could hardly be anything less than unusual. The man behind the camera, as filming began in late summer 2003, was former Monty Python member Terry Gilliam. Heath excitedly said, "I'm a huge fan of Terry's work, and I've always been a Monty Python fan," adding, "We kind of brought a bit of Baron Munchausen-esque humour into it," with a reference to one of Gilliam's earlier films. He couldn't compare The Brothers Grimm with any recent work from the director's catalogue, however, as the Prague-based film was due to be his first release since the end of the 1990s. Following his days as animator in the Python television shows and films, Gilliam had built a reputation for being one of the most innovative directors around, but his films had a history of being anything but predictable, and on occasions plagued by off-camera problems. His credits, including directing or co-directing 2 Monty Python films, and such weird extravaganzas as Time Bandits, Jabberwocky, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, and the highly praised Brazil. In between this list were a number of ideas that never came to fruition, and, most famously, the film that accounted for that lull after 1998's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas starring Johnny Depp. For years, Gilliam had wanted to make a film based on Don Quixote, the fabled Spanish fictional hero who travelled the land tilting at windmills in his quest for truth and honour. The resulting £32 million The Man Who Killed Don Quixote collapsed due to the illness of the leading actor Jean Rochefort at the start of shooting and catastrophic weather that washed away the entire set. The project, which again had Depp on board, was scrapped, and the nightmare subsequently captured in the documentary Lost in La Mancha. All that was hopefully behind Gilliam, however, when shooting started in Prague, with Heath as Jacob, or Jake as he was called in the film, and Bourne Identity star Matt Damon as Wilhelm, Will, as he was referred to. Being a Terry Gilliam project, this was never going to be an ordinary biography. His vision of the brothers transformed them from the linguist researchers they had been in real life into a pair of 19th century con men who duped people into paying them to drive out evil creatures that are, in reality, fake beings created by the pair themselves. Eventually, the two are asked by the French government to do a deal with a real evil creature, played by Monica Bellucci, that sends them off on a wild adventure. Heath and Matt Damon, it should be emphasised, were 2 of the biggest young hunks in cinema, yet it was hard to recognise them in their Bavarian costumes and makeup. Heath's hair was cropped, and he wore a pair of spectacles perched on the end of his nose. And talking of noses, the entire film almost came to naught in a row over Matt Damon's false nose. The Times of London was among the newspapers later to report that Gilliam clashed with the film backers Bob and Harvey Weinstein over the false nose that the director wanted to put on Damon. The Times reported that the director believed that Damon, who plays one of a pair of con men who extort money from villagers by eradicating fairy tale villains of their own creation, had too cute a nose for his part. He persuaded the actor to add a bump to his snout, which transformed his appearance. "It actually changed him," Gilliam said. "It was like Dumbo and his feather. Matt walked different. He behaved different. Girls looked at him differently. He looked like a young Marlon Brando." The Weinsteins thought otherwise. On the night before shooting was scheduled to begin, they contacted Gilliam. They came over and said, "We close the film down if you put the bump on his nose," Gilliam said. "That is the madness. There is